coming down from the mountain, preaching the Sermon on the Mount, and he meets a leper who comes up to him and says, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." And Jesus says, I will. And he touches the leper, and instantaneously he is healed. Jesus goes to Peter's mother-in-law's house, and she's in bed. She has a fever, and he just comes up and touches her hand, and the fever leaves. Jesus is walking down the street, and two blind men approach him or yell at him and say, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." And Jesus yells back to them and says, do you believe I'm able to do this? Yes, we do. And he touched their eyes, Scripture says, and they could see. A ruler came to Jesus and said, "My daughter has just died, but come lay your hand on her and she will live." So Jesus goes to his house and he takes her by the hand, and even in death, she gets up and walks out, and the funeral's ended. What do you do when the deceased is alive? A centurion came to Jesus and said, My servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. Say the word, he says, and my servant will be healed. They have some correspondence, and then Jesus responds, saying, "Go, let it be done for you as you have believed." And Scripture says at that moment, that very moment, the servant was healed. The disciples are in a boat, and Jesus is asleep, and a storm's come up, and it's rocking back and forth, and the waves are coming over, and they're having trouble. They can't bail the water out as quickly as it's coming in, and they're scared for their lives. They know they're going to die, and so they wake up Jesus and they say, "Lord, save us." And so he gets up, and Scripture says he rebukes the storm, and the waves immediately stop. The wind immediately stops. People are bringing demon-possessed people to Jesus, and he says the word, and the demons have no choice but to obey and leave. They have to. They understand that Jesus is the highest authority in the universe, and they don't even have the option to disobey him. These are the things we've been talking about in the month of June. And if you've been with us, we've kind of taken a different approach. We'll have one song, some teaching, and then the response is worship. Let's worship the authority and the awesomeness of Jesus. And these are the things we've been talking about in chapters 8 and 9 of Matthew. We have described in great detail Jesus' authority over the flesh. He speaks, and the flesh responds. It has no choice. It just does it. His authority over nature. He speaks, the winds, the wave, anything. All of nature must listen to him. And his authority over the spiritual world. When he speaks, even demonic myriads of demons must respond to him. So you would think, with all this authority that has been shown to us, authority over everything, that intelligent, logical, clear-thinking human beings would recognize this authority and fall right in line with the rest of creation and acknowledge his authority over our lives. You would think that, wouldn't you? But when God set up the universe, for whatever reason, he made it so that nature would obey him without question. The spiritual realm would submit to him without hesitation. The flesh, human flesh, would respond to his command instantaneously. But the human heart, he designed it so that we would have a choice to obey or not. Now, as we said last week, if you were here, about the spiritual world, the whole spiritual realm, this arena, is a permission-based arena. You have to give demons permission to have influence in your life, but you also have to give God permission. He won't force himself on you. You have to give him permission to exercise his authority in your life. He won't just take it. Now, don't get me wrong. There will be a day when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. It's going to happen. Okay, it will happen. But until that point, we're on our own. As far as we decide. We have to give him permission for that authority. We have full control. So as we wrap up chapters 8 and 9 of Matthew today, We're going to do so by looking at Jesus' authority over people, and we'll do so by looking at the different responses of three different individuals who responded in three different levels to his call to discipleship. You'll probably fall within one of these. It's a good chance. First, we'll look at the scribe. The scribe. It's in Matthew chapter 8, verse 18. When Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. So basically, he's saying, all right, we're going to hit the other side of the lake. All right? We need to take off. And some people heard this. A scribe came up to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Pretty impressive for a scribe to say that, right? And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Now, on the surface, it sounds like a pretty good statement. Jesus, I'll follow you wherever. You just tell me where we're going. I'm with you, right? And then you have this kind of odd response from Jesus. Yeah, but foxes have homes and birds have homes. I'm homeless. I don't know. What kind of response? That's an odd response, isn't it? Well, this is one of those times where the structure of the Greek, the original language this was written in, actually gives us a little more information than we get from just reading the English version that we have. The scribe here is actually making a very short-term commitment. He is responding to Jesus' order to go to the other side of the lake. And he's basically saying, hey, I'd love to go with you to the other side of the lake, wherever that is you're going. That'd be cool. I'll go with you. Right? He's making a short-term commitment. I'll follow you for a few hours, a few days. I'm not sure how long, but I'll kind of give this thing, I'll write this out a little bit. And Jesus comes back to his short-term proposal with a long-term answer. Hey, ultimately, we don't even know where we're going. We're following where the Father leads us. We're doing wherever he sends us, we're going. When you're ready to make a commitment to go anywhere, anytime, do anything I tell you to do, then we can talk. That's the conversation that's going on right there. So the scribe is giving a partial commitment. I'll follow for a while. Okay? Checking things out a little bit here. I suppose in our contemporary society we'd call it a seeker. I'm kind of just feeling out who you are, checking things out, seeing what's really in this thing for me. I'll follow you as long as it works for my schedule. I'm a pretty busy person, so, if it works in, I'll make it work. I'll follow you as long as you don't ask me to do something like really crazy, because I have a very comfortable life. I know what I want, and I don't want you to mess with that, right? I'll follow you as long as I don't have to get too serious about this whole thing. This is the modern day believer. Doesn't that sound kind of like that? I'm with you, right? I love the peace. I love the love talk. I love the community, the fellowship. That's really cool. But I'm not really interested in that all-out, reckless, abandoned obedience. Okay, I don't want to give Jesus full throttle authority of my life because that's asking an awful lot. That's the scribe. This is the casual believer who says, okay, Jesus, I'm with you as long as you agree with my views. I have a list here of things that I'm pretty strong on, and if you're against this, forget this. Okay? Whatever the views might be. I'm with you as long as it doesn't really cost me anything, right? I'm with you as long as all I have to do is say a little prayer in the pew for an hour and then go along the rest of the week and do whatever I want with my life. That's mine. I'll give this hour to you. I'm keeping the rest. Yes, Jesus, I get it. You have full authority over the flesh. You have full authority over nature. You tell demons what to do, and they have no choice but to listen. But I will give you partial authority in my life. That's the scribe. I hope that's not you. I hope. How about the generic dude? That's another guy. I had no other way to... I was going to call him the red-shirted Star Trek guy, but that might go down a track. I don't know. He disappears usually in every scene, The generic dude, right? Matthew 8, verse 21. Another of the disciples, there's still a group that we're still boiling down to who the 12 are going to be, right? So one of the people, followers, listening to the Sermon on the Mount, interested, another of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. Now, again, this will throw you off a little bit if you're putting it through the filter of today and our culture. A couple things you need to know about their culture. And you may even know this, you may know this, but you want to make sure, you got to be reminded, because this is the filter you got to put this story through. Number one, the most important thing to a person in that culture is honor, right? It is being a person of honor. The most honorable thing that you can do is care for your family. And this guy is basically saying, I must fulfill my societal duty to my family, or I will dishonor myself and I will dishonor my family. That's huge. That's the most important thing in life, more important than money and success and everything, is honor, right? And it sounds like a pretty decent and responsible request. Jesus, let me fulfill this duty, and I'll be right there. I'll be right there. Okay, the second thing to filter this through is to remember funerals all happen in a day, right? If someone dies this day, by sunset they're buried. They're not laying around for a while. They're not anything like our culture. They have to be buried that night. And when your dad dies, a lot of us have been in this boat before. When your dad dies, everything stops, right? I mean, work stops. You don't go into work later that day and say, well, my dad died today, but I'll put in my 8 hours. I mean, that's not going to happen. Even in their culture, the very important religious festivals stopped. Someone dies, you go take care of that situation. Birthday parties stop, right? You don't care what concert's going on tonight if your dad just died. You don't care what speakers, showing up down the road if your dad just died. You don't care about anything. You care about your dad and about your family and the pain and the grief and the things you're going through. Sometimes you even forget to eat, right? You just do. That comes later, but in the process of it just happening, your mind just is so, you're all that matters is burying dad and grieving the loss with your family. So if his father had died that day, there's about a 0% chance that he was walking down and heard Jesus speaking, thinking, hey, I better listen to him, speak for a while. I mean, it's just not going to happen. He is focused. I got to get home. If he wasn't home, I got to take care of the details. My family needs me. Everyone needs me. Jesus will be here tomorrow. I'll talk. I'll figure him out later. I got to get home. This is. He wouldn't have been stopping around. He wouldn't have even had the conversation with Jesus if he had just died that day. So put those two things in mind. These two little contextual, cultural things to filter through the story. And what this guy is actually saying is, it's believed, my dad is getting up in years. His health is going. I don't know how long we have. I need to fulfill my societal expectations, my responsibility, take care of my dad until he's gone, whenever that's going to be. And when that's done, I'll catch up with you, Jesus. Okay? This man is making a future commitment. I will follow you someday. Really, I will. I know you're important. I get it. You're Jesus. You're a great teacher. I'm going to follow you someday. And in response, Jesus basically says to him, no, you will drop everything you're doing. You will drop every commitment you have made. You will drop every family bond and societal obligation you think you have. You will follow me now, today. Let the world take care of their own stuff. The most honorable thing in life is to follow me, Jesus. That's a pretty heavy conversation going on right there. Think of all the reasons maybe you have given, or you know of friends who have given for not following Jesus, who think maybe someday, I'm kind of checking him out, I'm not really sure, and I've heard from so many people, school is so intense. I don't have time to follow Jesus right now, but when school is done, when it's not so intense, then I'll follow Jesus. Or when I get married and settle down, man, that's when I can really focus on life and it's settling down, right? And then I'll follow Jesus. Or when my marriage gets worked out, we're having some issues and we got to get that stuff worked out. Once that is figured out, then I'll start following Jesus. Or, when basketball season is over, it's really important to me and I can't really follow Jesus because, there's just there's games, there's stuff going on. I got to do that. Or when I find that church that I agree with every single thing they say, that's when I'll take Jesus seriously. Then I'll start following him. For now, I'm kind of on the outside looking in. Or I will when I go to college. I'm in high school right now. I'm doing the high school thing. And in college, that's when you become an adult and you get real serious, and then I'll follow Jesus. I'll get in the campus ministry and do all that stuff. And then you get to college and it's like, Well, I'm in college. Are you serious? I'm doing the college thing. When I get out of college, then I'm going to follow Jesus because I'll be settled down, I'll get a job, and that's when it's time to do the Jesus thing. It just keeps going. Life is so busy. When life isn't so busy, I'll follow Jesus. Well, when the kids get a little older and they get in school, I'll have some time for myself. I'll follow Jesus. No, when the kids are out of school, because they're so full of activities, my life is just filled to the brim. There's no way I can follow Jesus now. Then I'll follow Jesus. Or when I get a different job, I will one of these days. Here's the deal. No, you won't. If you've been saying that for years, no, you won't. How long have you been saying that and haven't? The reality is, life never really settles down. It just doesn't. It goes into different phases. You have different things, but it never settles down. There is no perfect marriage. There is no perfect job. There is no calm and peaceful life of tranquility that leads to spiritual bliss where you suddenly think, now I'm going to follow Jesus. There's no perfect church. There's no figuring stuff out. I've been following Jesus for, 45 years. I haven't got him figured out. All I know is I'm following it. And as I figure more out, I follow. He just leads and I follow. That's all I know. What there is Jesus. And he calls you to follow. And he calls you to give him permission to have authority in your life. That's what we know. It's a yes or no proposition. It's a do it or don't proposition. It's not a maybe later or I'm going to think about it for a little bit longer. It's either you are or you aren't. You will or you won't. This unknown guy evidently wasn't willing because that's all we know about him. He's just an unknown guy. We just don't know the rest of his story. But our last example of Jesus' authority over people is from someone who understood what Jesus was looking for. He got it. He understood all these things of authority we've been talking about. He witnessed them and said, that's the guy worth following. His name's Matthew. He wrote the text we're studying right now. And in chapter 9, verse 9, it says, as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collector booth. That was his job. And he said to him, follow me. And he rose and followed him. Look at that. No pushback. No argument. No, let me think about it for a while. This is a pretty heavy decision to make. None of this, well, I'm in the middle of my shift right now at work. Let me clock out, and afterwards we'll talk. This is Matthew, who is in a very lucrative job. I mean, this is a big paying job. It was a wild, fast-paced life. Think, NBA superstar, that just does what they want. That's the tax collector of their day. And he's being invited to follow Jesus while he's at work. And he gets up and just walks away and leaves everything behind and follows. It's the NBA star who's dribbling down the court, suddenly stops and looks up, lets the ball go, walks off the court, and never comes back. Who does that? Matthew. Quits his job, leaves his family obligation, drops out of societal obligations, and says, I give you 100% authority in my life, Jesus. And to be honest, he probably didn't even know what that meant. All he knew, I'm in. I'm following. I'm following. And he started. Matthew's the total commitment. I'm in 100%. You see, this is what Jesus is looking for. He calls us to 100% reckless, abandoned followership. He calls you to leave your life and follow him. He calls you to leave behind what everybody else is doing and follow him. He calls you to complete obedience. He doesn't do it from a place of weakness. He does it from a place of authority, right? The winds and waves obey him. Demons bow and submit to him. Human flesh reacts instantaneously to what he says. All of that in chapters 8 and 9 in Matthew was very precisely written to show you that Jesus is worthy of authority in your life. He is worthy of your heart. That's his point. Sermon on the Mount, here's what the kingdom's all about. Chapters 8 and 9, I have the authority to say so. Follow me. So when Matthew decided to start following Jesus, he did what any self-respecting partier would do. He threw a party. He invited all of his drinking buddies, all the women, all the people who lived this wild lifestyle with him, and invited Jesus and the other disciples to his house. And he gets them all together for this party. And it's in verse 10. It says, as Jesus reclined at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. What a sight, right? And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? But when he heard it, he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus came for the sinners. Thank God. He came for you and he came for me. And he calls the church to be the spiritual hospital where sinners, the ones that the religious people look at and are like, why are you hanging out with them, right? He calls the church to be this spiritual hospital where sinners can come and be healed and rest and find peace. Isn't that what we're called to do? Let me rephrase that. That is what we're called to do. You probably noticed on Facebook this week that the church is filled with people welcoming hurting people into the spiritual hospital. This is what disappointed me so much about the response of Christians last week to the Supreme Court's decision. I'm not going to talk about this whole thing, but wow, talk about falling right in the text. When people celebrate this decision and go full bore into the lifestyle, in any lifestyle that you chase after with sin, right, will end with disillusionment and hurt and pain and suffering. That's just one of them. I've chosen other roads to go down, right? I mean, you have it too, Doesn't matter what your road is. The point is, it will lead to all kinds of pain, okay? And when they hit that point where it's like the bottom, and they're like, I was so sure this would bring me happiness, and it didn't. I was so sure that this would bring fulfillment in my life, and it didn't. When they realize I'm sick and I hurt and I need a place to find healing and hope, where do you think they will go? To the people who they've spent their whole lives kicking them in the teeth, or somewhere else? I don't know. The Holy Spirit can change hearts and do all kinds of things, so I got hope there. We have a neighbor, or someone in our neighborhood, who we think has passed away recently. Honestly, we're not sure. They lived here before we moved here in 2001, so they've been here quite a while. And we've seen them 4 or 5 times ever, And I've tried to be the neighbor, hey, how you doing? And they always look back like with a scowl and like, they literally have never spoken to us ever, right? No matter how many times we wave or smile or try to be neighborly or greeting, they just look at us like, you are losers, I wish you weren't here. That's the feel we get. Now, I thought it was just us, because I get that from a lot of people. It might be my personality, I don't know. But I found out he may have died because one of the neighborhood children came and asked, "Hey, did you know?" I don't even know the guy's name. That's how I know the guy. "Do you know if so and so died?" I don't know. Well, they saw an ambulance come, and they saw a little bit later another car roll up and like a bag. And we're going, well, I mean, sounds like we're like. She said, "Well, the only time I ever talked to him was when he yelled at me because my friend left their bike in the." I mean, that's the guy. Okay, that's the guy. He's just not known as a place you go to have a good conversation. If anyone in our neighborhood is needing help, their house is on fire, something terrible is happening, the last place on earth they would go is to this guy's house. Because we assume, and I'm with them, they probably would just not care. I already know they don't like me, whoever they are, whatever their name is, I don't know. Okay? I don't want that to be said at the church. That's what breaks my heart of what I've seen. But I'm not telling you, I can't tell you anything specific. Just overall what I've seen in reaction to the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage. I don't want to be the angry, self-absorbed neighbor where hurting people are afraid to go. I don't want to be that. Especially when Jesus says, "I've come for those who are sick. I've come for those who are hurting. I've come for those who've made every mistake you can make. Bring them in. I've come to forgive. I've come to heal. I've come to refresh. I've come to bring fulfillment to life that they've been looking for. They just looked in the wrong spots." So Jesus has walked down the hill after giving this fabulous Sermon on the Mount. I mean, just filled with stuff. Moral teachings and a way of living and all these things. And after proving his authority to make those types of statements and proving he has authority to invite you personally into discipleship, he extends that call to you and to me. Will you follow me? Will you follow me? And we have to decide, what will I do with this offer? Oh, I'll follow partially, and just enough to have one foot in, and well, that's a choice. You can decide to put him off. That's just a bad season in your life right now. You'll get to it later, right? Or will you get up and leave your life? All the stuff that wasn't working. Leave that behind and follow, like Matthew did. The first step's pretty simple. It's just that declaration, I want to follow you, Jesus. I want to follow you. Matter of fact, that's how we set up our worship today. It's more reflective than exciting and full band. It's more, this is us having an opportunity to say, I want to follow you, Jesus. And if you've never made that choice in your life, please don't just sing this, pray this. Because he's standing here saying, will you follow? And the words of the song are so clearly saying, yes. If this is your time to do that, man, do it. Do it. And another step, I'll say, in this discipleship process, it tells us, we find out, we'll study this in depth in Matthew 28, where Jesus said, hey, make disciples, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all things that commanded. It's that step of baptism. If you've never done that one, that's like beginning stuff. That's just like, I'm in or I'm not. It's a public proclamation. I've decided to follow Jesus. I'm in. Right? We'll help you with that. What we're going to do, I'm going to get off the stage. We're going to sing. We're going to pray our song to Jesus. And if you're at that point, you're ready to follow Jesus, where you never have before, or you need to redo it, reboot, whatever, I'm going to be hanging out by the prayer room. You just go back there. We'll go in and pray. We'll talk. We'll do whatever Jesus says next, right? If you're the Matthew who's already 100% in, what an opportunity to just spend this time and say, I reaffirm I'm in. I'm in. Let's stand together as God's church.